So Jeremy Corbyn's new party, well, tentatively called Your Party, although it may change in the future, has reached 1 million signups. And on the other hand, you've got Keir Starmer, whose popularity is dropping. Like, I've not seen this kind of a drop before. Even the Conservatives had a more of a gradual drop. I think it just goes to show that these centrists who try and placate to right-wing talking points in terms of their anti-immigration policies or cultural war issues such as the transgender wars. I mean, the more you try and copycat them, the more you're seen to be just an opportunist, just trying to follow focus group testing and polls in order to try and capture the right wing. Only that you only be seen as the diluted version of the right wing, and also an opportunistic and insincere form of the right wing. Not that Nigel Farage is sincere. In fact, he is just another millionaire businessman, or he may not be necessarily successful, but he is obviously a grifter, the Andrew Tate of politics, as you can what it seems like is. He's somebody who may be very, verbally talented, may be able to appeal to a large group of people, and says the right things, and presses the right buttons, and distracts from real issues of privatization of our healthcare, failing infrastructure, the fact that we've seen the biggest wealth transfer to billionaires from the COVID era, and cover it up with, carte blanche, cover it up all with a flag. And there is no real opposition to this from Keir Starmer lot, who are more likely to say, no, actually, I will put a flag every 5 meters. You only want to put a flag every 20 meters. And it just seems, it seems so insincere. It seems like you can just see this in the comments too. It just seems so fake, cringe, and ridiculous. So what we want really in politics is sincerity. And there are a few people more sincere than Jeremy Corbyn. Even somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC, who at one point, I believe, were sticking to their guns and sincere, they're completely compromised by the affiliation or the lack of any opposition, strong opposition, I'd say. They are in opposition to Israel government, but they're very, so it leaves us, feeling, there should be more. There should be more. It's more of a stronger opposition. And from my study of historical, how Israel itself was kind of formed, I've come to the conclusion that Zionism itself is a racist entity. Now, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn would go so far to say that, because there's a huge amount of education that is required in order to come to that conclusion. For example, the first Zionist thinkers, from Theodor Herzl to who coined political Zionism, who rather founded political Zionism as an ideology, to the first future Israel foreign minister, Moshe Sharett. Moshe Sharett literally said that we did not come to inhabit a land, we've come to conquer it. And then he goes on to say that he does not want to share it or have a common ground with the Arab Palestinians, but rather that kind of thinking would dilute our project of Zionism and a homeland for the Jews. So the idea of a two-state solution was already dead in the water, notwithstanding the racism that they felt towards the Palestinians, but it was something that was not on the cards in their takeover of the land. And this is very obvious, because people who lived side by side with each other in villages and had amicable relations with each other, suddenly, due to the strategy of Zionism, they became enemies. And the newcomers to the land, for the most part, because when the Balfour Declaration was was made in 1917, only 5 to 10% of the people were Jewish. And for the most part, they were more Palestinian than anything, not Israeli. It was only over time that there was immigration to the land of Palestine due to the promise of a Jewish homeland, that you would have more and more concentration of people that were from the non-Middle Eastern contingent of people. But it just goes to show, these people came in and they lived side by side in these villages before the state of Israel was formed, and this evil ideology, it sounds hyperbolic, but when you actually read the history, when you read the mindset of these people, they never considered Palestinians as equal human beings. And we really need to understand. We need to have a politician actually, or rather, a political movement that actually understands this, or at least is able to see the connection in the broader picture of how Israel was formed and the ideological underpinnings of Israel, of Zionism and Israel, and how that continues to this day, and how you have settlers in their belligerent behavior attacking the indigenous people of the West Bank, Palestinians, who from genealogical evidence suggests and shows very clearly that they the descendants of the Canaanites who were there prior to the Judeo Christian religions before 2000 BC. Their descendants are in the form of Palestinians and Lebanese people, and they have a stronger connection to the land than even the strongest more genetically linked Jewish people. So there's something that is overlooked here for political purposes. Now, I do not believe that Jeremy Corbyn and your party, whatever party, whatever name is coined for this party, will acknowledge Zionism as a racist threat, because we are living in a more we want to get things done, and getting through this kind of like this grime of historical misinformation, and also the cultural status quo right now, the paradigm right now, in that Israel exists as a nation, and the people, the argument that is made is because of the Holocaust, they had to establish a land, even though, here, listen to this, the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, in 1904, this is a man who's very much a believer of Zionism. He moved to Warsaw, and in his memoirs, he says, "For many of us, anti-Semitic feeling had little to do with our dedication to Zionism. I personally never suffered anti-Semitic persecution." And then he goes on to say, "We emigrated not for negative reasons of escape, but for positive purpose of rebuilding a homeland." So it was more for self-determination from an identity point of view, but not rather for a lot of these people. Instead of kind of this what is put forward is this argument that it is because of the Holocaust. That is more of a pretext to which you can present an argument for the state of Israel, not the actual reasons for why this was already in place before the Holocaust happened. Now, I understand why that might be an emotional case for a lot of people, but that is not the underpinnings of Zionism as a political movement. The political movement of Zionism was already in play before World War II. And we have testimonies, these quotations from people like Moshe Shmelansky, who's another Zionist thought leader, who literally referred to the Palestinian Arabs as semi-savage. This was 1926. So this was 20 years before World War II. So if we need to kind of put this all together in context, there is an element of, obviously right now, that is, Holocaust is used as a kind of a ideological underpinnings and the emotional kind of hook by which you can get people indoctrinated to believe in the state of Israel. But the Zionist underpinning, the ideological underpinnings of Zionism was already in play. But to go back to the original reason for this video, is that we want sincerity and a commitment to history and facts and reason. We won't necessarily come to the conclusion that Zionism is racist, even though that was a UN resolution, Security Council resolution, I believe that was passed in 19. Let me just double check, but it was in the 70s or 80s. It was confirmed by the UN Security Council that Zionism is racism, and 2/3 of the countries voted for that rather than against it. Obviously, Israel would be against that notion, and so would the United States. But the United States overturned that in the 90s. But Zionism is very much a racist phenomenon. And the reason why people would be against admitting that is because racism itself has a negative connotation involved with that. The idea that you don't consider people having prejudice of other people without even understanding why you have the prejudice, or even understanding the people that you're judging. It seems like an irrational point to have, an irrational argument, an irrational mindset. But that is the very basis of their whole reason for in the most part, for living for a lot of these people. For a lot of Zionists, the whole point is, a lot of it is to do with a belief, an inherent belief in, having a strong identity and believing that you're chosen, and having a racial supremacy over other people. And in future, I'll talk about, and I'll touch upon this now, that Zionism, or rather, the idea of a chosen people, is not only irrational, but it's also spiritually stupid. It's, the chance of being born on this planet is 1 in a billion, trillion. It's such an impossible event that everyone is chosen, and when you kind of fall into this kind of this belief of being chosen, it really creates a binary of a life that is infinite. Life is so full of diversity and amazing potential, and that is like completely always whitewashed with this erroneous belief. Furthermore, it's a belief that that is only localized to a certain area of the planet, where for thousands of years people didn't even know that these people existed. And if they were to come up to a random Japanese person and said, "I'm chosen," they'll just laugh in your face, because it is a self-serving ideology. People, in spiritual, in religious scriptures, it's said that God, humans are made in the image of God. Actually, the reality is, a lot of the conception of God is that God is made in the image of the people that are writing about God. Let me just elaborate further. The God of the Israelites, for example, is one whereby they are the ones at the top. Their tribe is at the one at the top, and God is a cheerleader for whatever they do. It's we shouldn't fall into the trap of believing their stories, but rather the commandments by God is really more of a it's a more of a self-report as to what they want a superhuman being to want to say. The idea that a this infinite God would somehow take the side. It's very tribalistic and very caveman-like. Just you have this huge amount of diversity. Intelligence is everywhere, beauty is everywhere, but this individual tribe believe that they're chosen by God. Furthermore, every king, every emperor believes that they're chosen by God. It's all like the image of it's God being created in the image of the people who are describing him. So this is a kind of an understanding that we need to explore more. The philosophical underpinnings of ethnocentrism. It's ridiculous. And to get to a point where we are more equal and justice, focused, we need to follow our own values and principles, be more sincere. And I believe your party as led by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana and many more talented politicians to come, I believe that is a step in the right direction in justice, in sincerity, in equality, in rationalism, in truth. The time will tell what will happen, but with time is ticking on what's happening in Gaza, and a year from now on, Gaza may not even exist as an identity, as a region. It may be completely displaced. The people may be displaced. Of course, a genocide is happening. And when people say a genocide is happening, it's not so much that they're killing every single individual, but rather the intent is to destroy them as a people. That is the definition of a genocide. And the Gazan population, their identity, their spirit is being destroyed. And what they do with other, a large proportion of people, such as ethnic cleansing, that is part of the picture. But that doesn't, you can have a genocide, but also have ethnic cleansing. This is all part of the larger strategy of taking over the land of Gaza, which is essentially a refugee camp of the Palestinians who left, or who are not so much left. They're forcibly displaced from their ancestral lands of 1948 Palestine, which is now in the form of an implant nation, Israel. And that's where we are right now. They'll be displaced, their identity and their as a people and as just a general mass of people destroyed, and so therefore it is a genocide, and that might be mixed in with a bit of ethnic cleansing, but the whole policy of Israel, it's black and white. It's very clear that they want to destroy them as a people. They want to get rid of them, because they're a reminder of the Nakba, they're a reminder of the fact that they were there before Israel was formed. And this is something that they will not live down. Never, ever. It's a blight on the image of Israel, but also we also need to continuously learn the history, remind ourselves about the history, understand why racism is a bad thing, because the very foundation of this argument is that racism is bad. And we need to explore the nooks and crannies, the elephant in the room, as to why Israel itself is a racist state. Anyways, more on this in the future. Hope you liked this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be very, very much appreciated. Thank you.